Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Her Faith at Work. I'm here today with a woman who is so multifaceted, it blows me away a little bit. You're going to find out more about that in just a minute. Her name is Tabatha, and she and her husband have been entrepreneurs since they were in college and run the gamut of as many businesses probably as you can think of in your mind. And so, Tabitha, thank you for spending some time with us, telling us all about your journeys and your adventures with your husband in entrepreneurship. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your family?
Well, first, thank you, Jan, for inviting me and taking a chance on me, the stranger. We share that in our prayer, but you taking a chance on me and meeting in the Facebook group, right? Social media does do great things. So
It
so
does.
thank you for allowing me to share my story and see how God works through the story. That's the only reason why I share my story is to see how God can work in other people. So
Amen, sister.
yeah. My story, honestly, my husband and I were high school sweethearts. So we met when I was 15, which is crazy because my
Wow.
daughter's almost 15. And so
Oh,
that's really
wow.
scary to think about.
Yeah.
And so we met when we were in high school. And it's funny because I can share this with your audience because I know they're God-fearing women on here. And when I was 15, I met him and in my spirit and in total, like, Holy Spirit, not in a vanity, not in a, oh, little girl crush, like in my spirit, God told me this is the man for you.
Wow.
You need to get him to date you because he was very shy and I'm not. And so I didn't want to come across as too strong, but I was very persistent with him and he definitely saved my life in so many ways,
Wow.
with just different twists and turns that life gave me. He was definitely my lighthouse with that. And God knew I needed that. So, all you mamas out there with teenagers, just trust that God is putting the right men in their lives and, pray for that. So I met him when I was 15 and, it wasn't easy and it hasn't been. I'm 38 years old. We've been together a majority of my life, but we have always put God first. And so I say that because it is the foundation of my story.
Mm.
And it should be the foundation of your story. Or if you have children, like pray over that because the relationships that we have will dictate the life that we lead.
Yeah.
And we have to put our faith and our direction that God is going to put that person in our life. And we have to trust that. And I think in a world where there is so much everything that it's hard to do that,
Mhm.
especially now. And so I say this because this is the foundation. Because when we were in college, we were together and he wanted to start investing in real estate. And I was like, yes, awesome. I love to decorate. I love to make things pretty. Let's do this. Right. And he was kind of the numbers guy. And I'm like, oh, yay, let's be like HGTV. Right. Like,
That's
all
awesome.
the things. And we learned a lot of things and hard lessons in the beginning, but it was the start of the path that God had for us. And we didn't know what that was going to look like. But
Mhm.
we got married shortly out of college, started having babies, and I knew that I wanted to be the biggest influence in their life. But I also knew that I wanted to make an impact. And I had this desire to do more. I had a degree in marriage and family studies. I knew I didn't want the normal career that brought because the results were still not very good with families and marriages that came to therapists. Like the divorce
Mm.
rate was, by the time they came to therapists, they they usually still get divorced. And I did not like that statistic. So I was like, I'm going to raise my babies. I thought about getting my real estate license because we loved the real estate space. So I was like, I'm gonna strap my babies on my back and I'm gonna go sell some houses and do some things. And,
That's
I had
awesome.
all these visions of that. And honestly, the only reason why I didn't really do that is because the real estate agent world, it was too analytical for me. Like there was too
Mm.
many numbers, there's too many things. And I just wanted to help people, like, whether it was getting them into their dream home or helping them get fit. That was the line of that I went in was to help people, moms especially, get fit and healthy after having babies and
Mhm.
loving their bodies and loving their mind, like really transforming. So that's where that started after my babies were born. I was like, okay, I'm going to help women love themselves again because we all know once you have babies and you've been married a little bit, sometimes the love for ourselves does not carry on.
Yeah.
That led to a network marketing company that was phenomenal. It was definitely a pivotal moment for me because it introduced me to the world of leadership and personal development.
Hmm.
And when I opened those doors of that world, I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. Like, this is like the hallelujah moment. If you guys have ever, your audience have ever had that where you just know that's where you're called to be. I didn't know what that meant. I
Hmm.
just knew that was my happy place. I like devoured everything. I would listen to everything during nap time and read and like highlighting every book and audible everything and podcasts were just kind of getting started at that time, but YouTube and all that stuff, I'm just consuming, and I knew that I wanted to do something with that. My husband farms, and so that was our main source of income, and we were doing rental properties. But we did a few flips at that time, and the hardest part of that, like I say that and it sounds all great and this is awesome. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, there were moments when I was in the fetal position in my bathroom because I wanted financial freedom. And it wasn't financial freedom like Dave Ramsey talks about. Okay. It was this intrinsic spiritual, like, bondage that I was in. And I didn't know how to get out of it. But I just kept following the breadcrumbs. Like God just kept saying, like, just trust me today. Like, take this breadcrumb, follow this one thing. If it was, reading a personal development book, if it was following a mentor, hiring a coach, like the little breadcrumbs are what led me to that freedom. And of course, I'm just like, just give me the money. Like, I just want the money. Like, it's kind of like, just make me lose all the baby weight, right? Like,
Right.
you
Right. Yeah.
want that instant thing. But when I look back, I wasn't ready. It
Mm.
would have crushed me, and not in a way of me because I'm a very strong person. It would have crushed my marriage. It would have crushed
Wow.
my relationship with my kids because I am such a driven person.
Hmm.
If God gave me that responsibility of the financials in the way that I wanted them, that was a heavy burden of a lot of people that I was meant to help, and it would have crushed everything. And he knew that. And
Mm.
so looking back, it's hard to swallow because in my head, like the money was going to make it better. But I just trust that he knew more than me. And it was just following the breadcrumbs every day. And that's really what I have done. And
Yeah.
I still fall back in the trap of like the financial bondage. And every day I have to say, no, in Jesus' name, I am not meant to be there. I'm not meant to be in scarcity. I'm not meant to be in doubt. I'm not meant to be in fear. I trust God gave me the tools and the talents and the gifts when He made me to make the impact and do the things that I'm called to do on this earth right now. And I
Mm.
have to tell myself that every day because there's a lot of insecurities and things that come up. And I'm like, no, I am one with God and I have the power of God and He gave me what I need. And that's it. Like,
Yeah.
and I will
That's
follow
amazing.
the breadcrumbs today.
That's so cool. I would have to go back and listen to my podcast episodes, but I would say more often than not, some sort of negative mindset or negative self-talk comes into the conversation. I think
Mhm.
we as women just inherently are plagued with it.
Yep.
And it's so difficult to wade through that and to really hear what God thinks about us and how God has put us together. And then to take that brave step forward
Yep.
into the purpose that he has for us. One of the things that I really would love for you to talk a little bit about is the self-awareness of the gifts that God has put in
Mm.
you, because clearly you and your husband have a broad range of giftings. If I was doing a ticker, let's see, you are in real estate, you have network marketing experience, you have farming experience, you have leadership and coaching experience. Am I missing stuff? Probably.
That speaking is one of my number one giftings. But that is
Okay.
one that, yeah, that is one that it's not new to me. I've known that I've had the gift of voice for a long time. The
Mm,
enemy put thoughts in my head that were like, hey, you need to shut up. You're too
Wow.
loud. You're annoying. Nobody wants to listen to you. You
Preach,
talk too
girl.
much. You don't care about people. You just care about
Yep.
yourself, right? All of the things. A lot of that was when I was younger because a little kid who talks a lot is annoying to people. Like
Yeah.
it just is. And so a lot of adults, and so I know that the enemy uses people around us like he does. And I don't know the wide range of people that, are listening here, but if you're a Christian, like the devil is here to steal, kill, and destroy. That's
Yep.
it. That's the only reason why he's here. So if he can steal your calling by
Mm,
using other people, he's going to. He's going to use everything. He doesn't care. He doesn't care who he has to mull over. He's going to use that. And
mm,
so other people would tell me like, you're too loud, you're too strong, nobody cares about you. And those plant seeds.
yeah.
And God was telling me, no, you're beautiful, use your voice and all these things, but the negative narrative was so strong, and
Mm,
trauma and sin come in there with a lot of other things that just I was a little bit chunky, overweight when I was younger, and it's because I turned to food. And so all of those things, those insecurities, like you're not pretty enough, people are going to make fun of you. When you talk, they're going to say you're fat and nobody cared. Like all of that
yeah.
was embedded in me before age 8. And science has
Wow.
proved that things that are embedded in you before age 8 are really hard to remove. They're not impossible, but it's really hard to remove those. And so
Mhm.
going back and looking at even when I was an adult, I would turn to alcohol, not because of like alcohol in a sense of like, oh, I need alcohol, like that part. It was, oh, when I drink, I can be more me because I can be loud and funny and talk, and people think it's fun because you're
Mhm.
drinking, and that's the thing, right? And so
Yeah.
it taught me a bad lesson in that. And so I had to break a lot of those, and that was just coming into my purpose on earth today.
Mm,
And so as I speak, even this last year, I finally said, you know what? I'm a speaker. God has called me to speak and use my voice for the women who are shackled in bondage. And he showed me that in 2018. And I started it then, but I'm decided. Like in
mm,
2018, I kind of dabbled in that,
yeah.
still hiding behind some other things. And this year I'm like, no, this is who I am. And I know who I am, and I know I'm not perfect, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to use my voice for good. And I'm going to allow God to use this gift that he put into me for his kingdom. And
Mm,
so the self-awareness, to go with your question, you have listeners on here that have amazing gifts, and you are so talented in all of your gifts, whether that's being an artist, whether that's being a speaker, an author, maybe a teacher, a nurse. Maybe your gift is like you make amazing food for people, like whatever that is, like you have an amazing gift. And we do two things. We either dumb it down, meaning it's so easy for us, we don't look at it like a gift.
yeah.
We don't look at like it's come so natural and easy to us. We're like, why would anybody want that? Like, why would they pay for that? Why would they even care about that? That whatever. Like, I can cook. A lot of people can cook.
Yep.
Not like you, not in the way you do it. Or two, something like with me, we were told that that was a wrong thing to be gifted in. Like nobody cared. Like that gifting isn't valued in our society. It's actually a negative. Like if you have a gift in that, it's a negative. Even somebody who is gifted at gaming, like
Mhm.
video games, people would say, oh, well, that's a horrible gift. Well, is it? Because if you look at gaming, it's strategy, it's focus,
Mm,
it's attention, it's dedication. Whether you want to believe it or not, if you don't agree with the video game or not, those are attributes, those are gifting. Now, we might need to rewire that into something that's more productive for the kingdom, but
sure.
don't devalue the gift where it's at. Just like speaking. Now, I can go and I can speak a lot of negative things. And I can go and railroad people, and I can use it for a lot of negative things, which are what people are doing nowadays.
Mhm.
Or I can use that gifting to inspire, to enlighten, to motivate,
Mm.
to clarify. Our world is so confused right now. What if I use my voice to clarify for somebody?
Yeah.
One clarification can move the needle like you would not believe. So,
Mm,
looking at that gifting, but you have to be self-aware, meaning you have to know you. And like for women, I say, have you dated you? Have you spent time with you and actually thought about what gives you joy? Like
Mm,
not happiness, not like, oh, pleasure, not even like pleasure, like pure joy. Like you literally light up when you do it. I love doing podcasts. Like it brings me joy. I don't care what your audience is. If I don't, I mean, yes, it'd be great to monetize it, but if all I do is get joy for this next 30 minutes and get to inspire somebody else, like that's joy to me. But
yeah.
it took me a long time to figure that. I had to figure out like what was draining me,
Hmm.
what I really wanted, not needed. God will fulfill my needs. I'm not worried about what I need.
Yeah.
What are my wants? What are
Mm,
my desires? Like,
yeah.
have I spent time with God and said, like, the desires of my heart, not just we use desires in the world in a different way, but like literally the desires of your heart. And that can be material things. It doesn't like that doesn't mean that it's a wrong thing.
Hmm.
God put those in there when you spend that time. So it's dating yourself and kind of dating God as well, like bringing him in the experience and saying, what's my personality type? I'm not sh confined by my personality type, but how are those blessings? How can I use that as a blessing? What things do I love down to my favorite color or TV show or music? I like hip hop music. I love the beats of hip hop music. I live in rural Nebraska where my town has more cows than people, and I am a white chick, okay? Like I am white, all right? So like but I love like hip hop music and I love the beats. I don't love all the cursing. I don't like the negativity of that. But like Christian hip hop music, oh my gosh, like I can like get down with it. I embarrass my older girls because they're like, "Mom, seriously." But
Yeah.
I love it. Like I love it. And it's not wrong that I love that. And
Yeah.
I love country music. Like, the range is crazy. So I don't ever say like because I like that, I'm wrong. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that as women, we as default, like something that we like, we're like, oh, nope, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I can't want that Louis Vuitton bag because it's too expensive. Or
Hmm.
I can't want to put makeup on because that's too vain. Or I
Yeah.
can't want to look too sexy in that black dress because then people will think I'm, Todd dress or whatever. And it's like, who told you that? And what
Hmm.
what box are you putting in? Now, yes, we don't want to go out looking like a streetwalker, okay? Like hear me in the range, but I feel like we go from that to over here where our wants don't matter.
Yeah.
And they do matter.
Yeah.
When you have that quiet time with the Holy Spirit and he leads you to that, then it matters. And there's a reason why you're drawn to that. And look at it like, what can I get that's positive out of that? So that's that self-awareness of knowing your gifts and then using them, like literally using them so that God can say, yay, yay, like I created that in you and you're using it. It's like, okay, moms
Yeah.
out there, what is the worst thing? Like when you give your kids a gift for their birthday and they didn't ask for it, but like your kid and they're gonna love it. Like you're so excited. You're like, oh, they're gonna look so good in it. They're gonna love it. What if they opened it up and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they closed it back up and put it under their bed.
Yeah. It's
That's
crushing.
that hurt. Like you're like, oh my gosh. But how does it feel when they open it up and they're like, oh my gosh, mom? Like, how did you know? Like,
Hmm.
how did you know I wanted that? Like, I didn't even tell you. I didn't even know I wanted it. And they get it out, and maybe it's a shirt, and they put it on, and they go walk around, and they just feel so special, and they just feel right. It's amazing. It's like that internal. Your heavenly Father gave you those gifts because he wants you to use them.
Yeah.
And if you go to him, he will allow those gifts to bless you in ways that you have never even imagined and bless other people in
Hmm.
ways that you've never imagined. But you have to be aware of that. You
Yeah.
have to discover you. It's not your husband's job. It's not the world's job. It's not your kid's job to tell you that you're great and amazing and you're appreciated. When you use your gifts, you're appreciated.
Hmm.
I am using this and I'm honing the skill and it's not perfect. My speaking skills aren't perfect. My storytelling skills aren't perfect. I hone those skills daily, but I'm not going to hide them anymore. And I did for a lot of years. And that ask for forgiveness all the time. Like, God, I am so sorry that I doubted you. I'm sorry I doubted your your love for me, your capabilities in me, your trust in me. I'm sorry for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's powerful. So something that you said really struck me with the gaming and pulling the strategy and the dedication and the attributes that make you a good gamer or
Mhm.
fill in the blank.
Yep.
I think we don't look at those enough. We don't look at the things that bring us joy that we excel at and almost dissect them to say, okay, what attributes do I have that
Mhm.
God put in me that make me good at this? And then how can I use those attributes in other ways?
Yep.
That's powerful. I just don't think that even crosses most people's minds because I like to say we're too close to our own genius because
Yep.
it does come easy for us
Yep.
and we just take it for granted that everybody does it. And so I think if we would spend a little bit of time maybe
Mhm.
with a piece of paper and a pen and the Holy Spirit and say,
Yep.
okay, what am I really good at? And then what are the attributes that God has gifted me with that make me good at this? And then, Lord, maybe how do you want me to use this in other ways in my life?
Yep.
And that's huge. I think that's huge. Hopefully, people grabbed onto that as much as I did. I think it's something that for sure the Lord's speaking in me,
Yeah.
and I think others as well. That's
Well,
that's
and I know that when people, when when you tell them like sit in a quiet room and have that paper and be ready, it's almost like so much pressure. You're like
it's
crickets, you
true.
know?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
a good stepping off point, and trust me, do that. Even if it's crickets, okay, do it for 5 minutes. If it didn't work, do it the next day. But to get your kind of juices flowing or allow God to work in other people because he does,
Yep.
ask people around you, what am I really good at? Like, if you could
Good. Yeah.
just name three things, like, what am I really? Some people don't like, oh, I don't want to sound like I'm not humble or I don't want to sound arrogant. No, like when people ask me, I'm like, oh, you're this and this and this. For everybody's birthday that I know, you will get a text from me and I will say what you're good at. I will say, I admire
Wow.
you because of this. Even if it's one thing, usually it's multiple. But I just did this with my sister-in-law. I admire your generosity, your heart for helping people, because I think we need to be reminded again, because we don't always know our own genius. And so ask people, even if it's your husband, sometimes we're like, oh, he's just telling me what I want to hear. Well, yes and no. If you ask him a question, tell me three things I'm good at, just allow him to do it. And then ask your pastor or if
Mhm.
some people in your, if you have a ladies circle or friends or whoever, just say, hey, what, even one thing or three things. Ask your kids, hey, what's mom really good at? And they might say some funny things like picking up laundry or whatever, but say like, why is that good? Oh, well, you organize it really well.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You're really good at
Yeah.
organizing, or you're always singing. You bring so much joy when you do chores. Like, I hate doing chores. That's a gift, And so, like, asking them, and then you go into your quiet space and you have somewhere to go,
Yeah.
because I think that's the starting off point. Sometimes it's a little pressure. I know when people would be like, go into your prayer room and do this. And I'd be like, okay, I got to do this. And then it's like your brain just is like, it's like
Yeah.
writer's. It's like, I don't want to get this wrong. And that's the thing. We don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
There's no wrong.
Hmm.
There really isn't. There are some things that are revealed to me that I'm good at that I'm like, am I? And God's like, yes, you are. But you
Yeah.
never believed it before. You
Yeah.
need to trust this and go into this and
Mm.
and don't put any walls behind it. You're probably good at 150 things. Like you have so many different giftings that you don't even know and that will come up for you. And something else I want to encourage your audience, your gifting also has what I call the double-edged sword. So I am very driven and ambitious and have high energy, and people always tell me this, and that's awesome. But guess where I fail a little bit? Patience, delayed
Yeah.
gratification,
Yep.
that like sitting still. But I've taught myself in that and to surround myself who that do have patience so I can not admire them in a covetous way, but admire them and like, man, what are they doing? Oh, I really like it's like aspiring to be like Jesus. Like I aspire to be that, but know that you are created the way you are for a reason. And if I was more patient, if I was these things that I, wish that I were, we all do that, right? The comparison game.
Yep.
If you were those things, you wouldn't be the things that you are to be the person that you are that God needs you to be for his kingdom.
Yeah.
There's
And
all
there's
walks of life of that.
for sure. And there's always room for growth.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you are, what level you have reached in fill in the blank, whatever you're
Yep.
trying to work on, there's always room for growth.
Mhm.
Okay, speaking of growth, I want to talk about your podcast because
Okay.
if anybody who knows me knows that I am a podcast junkie, like I would rather listen to a podcast than music or watch TV. I just love podcasts.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to find ones that are really good. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of junk out there.
Right.
And
Or the
I
same. Like they're
yeah,
repetitive. Do you find that? I find a
I
lot
do
of them,
find that.
the repetitive. Yep.
Yeah, you're talking about the same thing over and over and over again. You hear it on okay. If you're launching a book out there, I'm sorry if this is, going to move your cheese or whatever. But one of the things that is, I know it's a marketing thing, but when somebody's launching a book and then they appear on every single podcast that I listen to, and in the span of like 2 weeks, every one of my favorite podcasts is taken over by this one particular subject.
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
And it's like the same thing. It's like the
it's the
same
same thing.
interview.
Yep, same interview over and over again. These are the questions that you can ask. Anyway, that was a
Mhm.
little tangent.
Yeah.
Tabatha's
I get you.
podcast is not like that. And so I am a sucker for a good title, like good marketing, like really good marketing grabs me. And I will give my devotion to it because it just is, it's genius. And your podcast title is genius for somebody who's built like me as the consummate question asker and overthinker. So Tabitha's podcast are you ready? Is called What Went Wrong? The Untold Stories of Bouncing Back. And I literally have been binging it. It's so good. And it's these entrepreneurs, and I am going to let you talk to it, but from my perspective as a listener, it's entrepreneurs who really are open and vulnerable with the hard stuff in business, the lessons that they've learned that are hard learned, and then how they pivoted from that and were able to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, not stop, not quit, but move forward. And I think so many times when we are faced with what many would perceive as a failure,
Mhm.
we are tempted to stop or not push through. And your podcast really highlights the pushing through piece. And I think that's so important for people in this space in particular to hear. And so I just kudos to you for being brave enough to step into that space and find people who are willing to share all of the yucky stuff because that's
Mhm.
not easy to do,
No.
especially in the Instagram world that we live in now. So
Yes.
tell us how you started the podcast. Like, how did you even come up with the concept?
Well, I knew I tried doing a podcast, or I did a podcast in 2018, and it was more about like fitness and self-discovery, but it was kind of like everybody was doing that. And I just didn't love it. So I kind of put it aside. Well, a friend of mine about a year and a half ago, I had been building these relationships with high level entrepreneurs. And my friend said, you have to have a platform for them to come on, like to come
Mhm.
and speak on. And I was like, okay, I'll do, and I'm like, podcast. Okay. I don't, this is the coveted line. I don't have time to do a podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, who can do all that stuff?
Uh-huh.
Because before I tried to do everything. And so
Mhm.
he said, no, I have a guy and he will do your intros. He'll even help you with all the stuff. And so I met with him and he's the one we collaborated on the title. It's not just me, it was genius. This is why collaboration is so important. So if you're an
Yep.
entrepreneur, collaborate. Like you're better than your best thought, like in collaboration. And so we went through the titles and stuff. And I was kind of like, I'm an optimist. And so I'm like, is that too negative? Like what went wrong? But then it got me of human nature. We all want to know, even if you're at the high mountain, like we want to know what it took to get there. And we know that it wasn't all roses. And so it's like, if you're willing to be vulnerable, I'm going to connect with you even more. And so I was like, okay, so I like the title. Let's do this. And so I just kind of reached out to most of them that are on there, except for a few. Like I had built relationships with these people before. And so I went to them and I said, hey, I have this concept, but I'm going to ask you to go nitty gritty. Like, and if you don't, I'm going to ask the questions and I'm going to take you there. I mean, I said, disclaimer, I won't, if you really don't want to, like, I'm not going to like be a jerk about it. But I
Yeah.
said, the more vulnerable you can get, the more your audience is going to connect with you.
Yeah,
And so
that's
I
great.
said, I don't care if the what went wrong had to do with money, relationship, sex, addiction, pornography. Like, it doesn't matter to me. We all have a lot of things that go wrong. But like, what was one thing that maybe you didn't think you were going to bounce back for? Or the tagline is untold stories. So is there an untold story that your audience hasn't heard before? And honestly,
Mm,
like I'd say 90% of them were like, they wanted to share their,
mm,
story. I had one guy who I wasn't friends with before. We met through like a Facebook group. And he was one I had to dig a little bit because I didn't have a personal relationship with. But at
sure.
the end of the interview, he goes, that was like a therapy session. Thank you. He was like,
Awesome.
I kind of forgot about all of the things, because
Yeah.
he was at a better level. And then also what happened with him was so they had a what went wrong and it was kind of during COVID and then they came out of it. But what happened is they were kind of going through another what went wrong and he was kind of in the muck of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when he remembered the story of like what went wrong and then how he kind of came out of it, I think it gave him hope again of where he was
Mm,
at, like, oh, we're going to get through this. And
yeah.
so when you tell your story, it's like you have all the things that you need to get through it. It's that persistence. I am a
Mm-hmm.
big persistence person. As I told you at the beginning of this interview, I was so persistent with my husband. I was persistent in my businesses. I'm persistent. And so that's really what it takes, to get through those things. And
Yeah.
in the Bible, it's over and over. I mean, God took the Israelites around the easy way because he's like, you need to learn to persist. You got to build some things.
Mhm.
We got to build you up. If I'm going to have you be my people and like come into the glory land, like you got to persist and not be whiny, complaining, like, I want to go back to Egypt and be a slave, like, right?
Yeah.
And
They
I
didn't learn that lesson very well.
no, they didn't, right? And so I feel like humans are because
Yeah.
most people are not going to do what it takes to live an amazingly abundant, above mediocrity life. Like
Mm,
they just won't do it. But
yeah.
when you hear stories of other people that have, it inspires you. It's like that God did call me and
Mm-hmm.
I got distracted by all these other things. And that person right there, they are just like me. They're that everyday whatever. And if they can get through that, if they can get through meth addiction, if they can get through two spout or like, kids from two different husbands and like addiction, all the things, and they came out on the other side and they're,
Yeah.
living their best life. I can too. I can
Mhm.
live that extraordinary life that God put me on this planet for, because God did put us on this planet for an extraordinary life.
Yeah.
We've just been overrun with sin and distraction and doubt and fear and the enemy and all of those things. And when you can break through that and you can see other people who've broken through that, it gives
Mm-hmm.
us hope. And
Mm,
ultimately, hope is what is going to get you to that dream, that goal, that abundant life that God has for you in every area. And I'm not just talking finances. I'm not just talking about skinny jeans. I'm talking all areas of faith and hope and goodness and patience and all of it.
mm-hmm.
When you hear other people's story, we are wired for stories. And so
Yeah, for
that
sure.
was the whole reason. I just wanted to tell people stories. I was like,
Mm,
hey, if I interview them and I can get to some nitty gritty. And then I also dissect some famous people's stories. So my husband and I, we did this podcast and I'll be honest, it's not my best. And we're going to do some more, but I told my podcast editor, I said, just air it. just air it because it's not perfect. And I don't want people to think that we're perfect, and we're not. And
Yeah.
like the audio of my husband's not great or whatever, but we did like the business blunders of
Mhm.
some high level businesses and like what they did wrong. And some of it's controversial, like people who aren't Christian. I'm probably gonna get hate mail or whatever, and that's fine. But doing it, I was like, I have to put it out there for my audience to listen to and realize, like, even me as a speaker, because there was some stuff I was fumbling on my words, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this gonna come out right? And then I'm like, oh well, like it is what it is. God put it on deaf ears who need deaf, and open the ears that need it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's the stories of we need to look at things, especially in our culture right now where we're like politically correct and we're trying not to, offend anybody, and we do. And then what are we morally accepting that we want
Mm.
it, you
Mhm.
know? So there's a lot of different, perseverance, overcoming, and some of them are health, some of them addictions, like I said, some of them money, some of them, a lot of different things. So, and we're on YouTube. So we video everything too, because I feel like when you see the person, you can connect with them even more. And all
Yeah.
these people are doing great things in the world, and I support their businesses and their lives and what they're doing. So it's fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. I, I think that what stuck out to me about what you just said is that not only does it give hope to the listener that there's something on the other side of the yuck that they're walking
Yep.
through,
Hmm.
but it's a remembrance to the person whose story it is that the next time they go through something, they can make it through. And there's always a next time.
Always.
There's always a next time. And we
Yep.
just, yeah, pick ourselves up and work our way through one more time.
Yes.
There's always hope, always hope.
Yes.
This has
Always.
been so good. So, so good. And I know that people are going to want to connect with you. I'm for sure going to link your podcast down below, your YouTube
Yes.
channel in the show notes. Y'all put it on your weekly listen list. It's on mine. It's so good.
And give us
And
comments. I'm always like, who do you want to listen to? Let us know, because that's the thing. It's like
what a great
people are
idea. Yeah.
so scarce with like, their ratings. I'm like, if you have a story of even a famous person that you want me to like research and put on, I'm happy, because we do that as well. Or a topic that my husband and I like convert about, because his personality is way different than mine. So I love his perspective of that. But yeah, like, rate us, comment. Like, I want to hear from the audience, because that's the thing right now. It's just trying to get like other people like visibility and
Yeah.
sharing those stories with other people.
Yeah. What a great idea. Love that. So y'all go watch. So you want them commenting on YouTube, right?
Yes. And
Okay.
and it's on every platform of podcast as well. And so do that. But
Great.
like I think even like YouTube, it's just like make it go viral. Like share these stories of hope for people. We all watch these cat videos and these Mr. Beast videos and all
Yeah.
this crazy stuff that has no value to our lives.
Yeah.
It's like share this interview, because honestly,
Yeah.
there are some people, I mean, because I have interviews where people like they were going to commit suicide. I
Mm,
mean, they were like going to end their life and something happened. And there's somebody in your life that needs to hear that story.
yeah.
It's like, share that. Like, don't
Yeah.
hold that, share that, be that gifting. Let the voice of that, exude out. So,
Yeah.
yes.
I agree with that. I'm a firm believer that if you're listening to something or watching something and the Lord brings a person to your mind, there is a reason for it, and you
Yep.
better smash the share button
Yep.
because you don't know what's going to happen if you don't. And
Exactly.
so, yes, do that. And so, Tabitha, tell us how we can connect with you best other than podcast and YouTube,
Yeah.
and just all the things that people want to know about you.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Tab Thorell, and I'm sure you'll have the links. And then I have tabthorell.com. But the new program that my husband and I are launching is called Keep Legacy Wealth, which is just a program to help families invest in income properties, making it very simple, very easy, stress-free, so that you can build wealth legacy for your kids. But also, if you come into our group, into our community, we help you teach your kids what it means to not only earn wealth in this world, but what it means to keep wealth, and what that means,
Mm,
even in a biblical standpoint, of characteristics of wealth, of giving, generosity, saving, investing, financial literacy, without it sounding like financial literacy, because that
yeah.
sounds lame and nobody wants to learn. about that.
Yeah.
But with kids, bringing them together, uplifting them, showing them their gifts at a young age, that they don't just have to go to college and do the checklist. It's like
Mhm.
what they're gifting at. And when you bring them into a community with third-party credibility and other peers that can uplift them, they are going to be a light for society instead of all this heaviness of anxiety and depression and suicide. It's like we want to uplift children. So our group is called Keep Legacy. It's Legacy Builders is what it is. And we love that. That's all on our website. And we just want to invite anybody that has a desire to either one, invest in an income property, and you're so confused, you don't know what to do. Let's simplify
Yeah.
it. And then two, how we can make it a family unit. So first of all, it brings more joy to you and your family, so you keep it for generations to come.
That's amazing. I will definitely link all of those things in the show notes so you can go find out information about this. I know that I will be doing that because that's something that my husband and I are interested in doing. And so thank you so much for your time, Tabitha. I really have enjoyed our time together. And I think there is so much value that people are going to get when they listen. So thank you.
Thank you.